The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the familiar hum of universal translators as Ambassador Zethkar adjusted his crystalline exoskeleton. Around the circular hall, representatives from dozens of species occupied their designated sections, the Yi, towering Vorthak with their multiple arms, the ethereal luminari floating in their energy fields, and the mechanical nexus units clicking in synchronized patterns. The humans request admission to the Galactic Defense Fleet, announced Prime Counselor Velton, her voice carrying the authority of 1,000 conquered worlds. A ripple of what could only be described as amusement spread through the assembly. "Have you seen their vessels?" chittered Ambassador Clix through his mandibles. "Primitive chemical propulsion, crude metal hulls, and they still use projectile weapons." The insectoid's laughter was joined by others. Zethkar had observed the human delegation earlier. 3 representatives sat quietly in the observation deck: Captain Sarah Chen, Admiral Marcus Webb, and their translator, Dr. Elena Vasquez. Unlike other species that arrived in sleek vessels that bent space-time or manipulated quantum fields, the humans had arrived in what they called the UES, Defiance. The ship looked like a flying scrapyard, angular, brutish, with visible weapon mounts and armor plating that seemed almost medieval, compared to the elegant curves of galactic standard vessels. Their largest ship barely reaches Class 7 on the Technological Index, added Commander Silthara of the Luminari. "Our scout vessels are more advanced than their flagships." The Prime Counselor raised a tendril for silence. "Nevertheless, they have requested to demonstrate their capabilities. The outer rim sectors have been experiencing increased Void Reaper activity. Perhaps we can observe how these humans perform against a real threat." 3 weeks later, Zethkar found himself aboard the observation vessel Enlightened Witness, part of a small fleet tasked with monitoring the human demonstration. The Void Reapers had been growing bolder, their dark ships emerging from the space between galaxies to harvest entire star systems. Even the combined might of the Galactic Defense Fleet struggled against their reality-warping technology. The target was the Kepler 442 system, where a small Reaper harvesting fleet was stripping a planet of its resources. Standard protocol was to engage with at least a dozen vessels, overwhelming the Reapers with superior firepower and shielding technology. The humans sent 1 ship. The UES Defiance dropped out of FTL at the system's edge, and Zethkar had to admit it looked even more ridiculous next to the sleek alien vessels. Where galactic ships were smooth and flowing, the human ship was all sharp angles and visible machinery. Where others relied on energy shields that shimmered like soap bubbles, the humans had slapped on thick armor plating that looked like it belonged on a ground vehicle. 3 Reaper Harvester-class vessels detected, reported the Enlightened Witness's sensor officer. Each outmasses the human ship by a factor of 10. Captain Chen's voice crackled over the comm. "UES Defiance to Observation Fleet. We're beginning our approach. Recommend you maintain safe distance." The Void Reaper ships were nightmarish things, organic curves that seemed to absorb light itself, with tendrils that could phase through normal matter. As the Defiance approached, the Reapers turned their attention from the dying planet below. The first Reaper opened fire with reality distortion beams that could tear apart the molecular bonds of any known material. The beams struck the Defiance's armor and scattered. The ugly angular plating didn't just absorb the energy, it redirected it, bouncing the deadly beams in random directions. "Impossible," whispered Silthara. "No known material can deflect. Reaper weapons." Captain Chen's voice came over the comm again, and Zethkar could hear something that chilled him. She was laughing. "Tungsten carbide composite with a diamond lattice backing. Sometimes the old ways work best." The Defiance didn't dance around its enemies like other ships. It charged straight at them, unleashing a barrage of what seemed like primitive kinetic rounds. But these weren't ordinary projectiles. They were relativistic kill vehicles, chunks of depleted uranium accelerated to near-light speed by magnetic coils that ran the entire length of the ship. The first Reaper tried to phase shift to avoid the incoming rounds. The projectiles passed through the space where the ship had been and struck the second Reaper, punching clean through its hull as if it were paper. The third Reaper attempted to use its reality warping fields to deflect the incoming fire, But the humans had somehow calculated the exact frequency needed to counteract the effect. In less than 4 minutes, 3 Void Reaper ships, vessels, that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, were reduced to expanding clouds of debris. The observation fleet sat in stunned silence as the Defiance began salvage operations, deploying crude but effective recovery drones to collect Reaper technology fragments. How? Clix's mandibles clicked weakly. Dr. Vasquez's voice came over the comm, and Zethkar could hear the smile in her words. You all assumed that more advanced automatically meant better. You built elegant solutions to complex problems. We built simple solutions that work no matter what the problem throws at us. Your ships are works of art. Ours are tools of war. Admiral Webb added, every human military doctrine for the past 1,000 years has been built around one principle. Assume your enemy is bigger, stronger, and more advanced than you are. Then find a way to kill them anyway. The Prime Counselor's voice was barely a whisper. The humans, they don't build ships to explore or to trade. They build them to fight. Ma'am, Captain Chen replied respectfully. We build them to win. 6 months later, the Galactic Defense Fleet's new human contingent had pushed the Void Reapers back beyond the galactic rim. Their primitive ships, with their crude armor and simple weapons, had proven more effective against the reality-warping threats than centuries of advanced technology. Zethkar watched from his observation post as the latest batch of human vessels arrived at the Galactic Fleet yards. They were still ugly, still brutish, still looked like flying scrapyards. But now, when the other species looked at them, they didn't see primitive technology. They saw the ships that had saved the galaxy. And they understood why humans didn't build their vessels to be admired. They built them to ensure that something, somewhere, would always survive to tell the story of what happened when the galaxy needed saving. The humans called it overkill. The rest of the galaxy called it salvation.